We are beginning a series as we look at lectionary texts of this week and as we read the same text, the stories that the kids will be studying in Sunday school, which is, for them is the one that Alex read in Mark 8, 27 to 38. And then this James text, we are looking at who you are. Who are you? Who are you? Questions of identity. Why are we doing that? Because the text we're going into really focus on Jesus' interactions with his disciples and discipleship. And you could say we could call it discipleship. But what is discipleship? What is Jesus wanting? Is he wanting people to just take on, do, and be exactly like him? Or does Jesus want his followers to know who they are? To know who they are so well, that they can then be better disciples. Because I don't believe Jesus came just to create disciples. Jesus wants us to be humans, better humans. Jesus is supposed to be the model for humanity and Christian theology. So Jesus wants us to know what it means to be human, created in the image of the Creator. And what does that mean? So we're going to be looking at that all the way through Advent, different aspects of what it really means according to what Jesus says in Scriptures and what we have learned ourselves, what it means to be human. James would say in that very direct text that a lot about who you are comes out in how you talk and who you talk to and the way you talk and the things you say, that reveals a little bit about who you are. Sometimes it just reveals that you're having a really bad day. But in a kind of a constant, different way, a constant way of how we talk and the things that we focus on can be a clue to people and to us about who we are becoming or who we are and what kind of person we're going to be. And he says, beware to the teachers because they will be held to a higher standard. And that's always makes me sweat a little. It's true. And in fact, a new poll just came out saying that the pastors are increasingly dissatisfied with their work. Now, they didn't poll me, so I wasn't part of that. But increasingly dissatisfied because, I think probably because the church is in such flux. The churches are not growing as people want them to grow, or they're declining, or generations aren't going. And so people look to pastors, and that pressure becomes on them. They take on the pressure, and I know that all too well. And people want their pastors and teachers to be the miracle workers, to save everybody, to save the church. And so they're getting stressed out because no pastor can do that. I can't do that. An interesting article about Jim Hatmaker, who looked at this study, she wrote about it and had seen this happening in the church herself. Just the need then for pastors and congregations just to be honest about who they are, what they can do, and what they can't do. Hopefully that's something that I try to do, and then relook at how we are going to be the church together. So James has a little bit of truth there. The question of who we are is always being asked upon us. Who are you? It's an important question to know just who you are. To find your identity. Just recently, I don't know if they're still there, but there's this thing called Burning Man that a lot of millennials go to at the Black Rock Desert. And there are these things, I've never been there, but have you been there? Burning Man is this big festival. Thousands go, and then there's these camps, and you can find a camp for whoever you are, or whoever you want to be. There's camps for Zoom, spinning fire, for those people who like to spin fire and play with fire. Scar Bar, for those who want to come and compare and tell stories about the scars that they have. That's a camp. The awkward hug camp. Anybody need an awkward hug? They come to this camp. There's camps for those who have beards and people who love them. There's camps for around different food love, like there's a pickle camp. There's camps for those who are in recovering programs like AA, and there's camps for those to be there. Imagine there's probably a lot of different temptations at a place like that. There's camps for those who are on the autistic spectrum. There's camps for those who are feminists, camps for every orientation sexually or gender-wise. There's camps for tech nerds. There's camps for every artist of every kind. It's a very artistic community. You can find people like you there, or you can find people that you want to be like. Millennials searching for their identities. And maybe we didn't go to Burning Camp, ever in our life, but we have found camps and have been gravitating towards them according to who we are or who we want to be in our own lives. As kids start school, they are grappling and developing who they are, what friends they're going to have, and what they like to do in school, and what people think of them. And as they get older and older, it's going to be more of a stress of what others think of them. And I know all of us still ask that question, gee, I wonder what so-and-so thinks of me. What do people think of me? And that is a tough question. And in the gospel passage that Alex read, and in Mark 8, Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? I don't think Jesus is being insecure. He's genuinely curious, and he's setting up the disciples here. And they answer him and saying he is John the Baptist or Elijah the prophet. And there's always been confusion over who Jesus is. How is Jesus John the Baptist? John the Baptist had come and done his ministry just before Jesus' ministry had started, and he had been killed. And so some people thought he was just somehow John the Baptist remade. Or Elijah the prophet, the spirit of the prophets is said to come and return into people, kind of like a reincarnation. There's always been confusion over who Jesus is. And in fact, in our churches in this town and in our country, you can get a whole different idea of who Jesus is if you go to so-and-so church, or if you go to that church, or if you go to this church. And even within the churches, if I were to poll you who Jesus is, you would probably give me all sorts of different answers. Who Jesus is. Is he a prophet, or just a man, or is he a historical myth, or is he really somebody that you know and trust and talk to in your life? Everybody has a different idea of who Jesus is. Well, Jesus doesn't seem too interested in what people say about him. He begins immediately after they give him a few answers, setting them up for this important question. Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Now, I don't know, was Jesus looking for a specific answer? Was there a right answer that he was looking for? Or did he simply want to know, people to know, and his disciples to know, that it's important for them to ask that question? To look at Jesus and who he is and how he taught and how he lived, and to know for ourselves, who do we think this guy is? Who is Jesus? Peter jumps up and says, you are the Messiah. Messiah meaning the one who saves. This is one who is believed to be coming to lead the people of Israel to take their kingdom back and establish a new kingdom here on earth in Israel. Kick the Romans out. The Messiah had been this long-held belief, as Jews had been exiled and they had been invaded and occupied throughout their history. They wanted no more of that. They wanted a kingdom like the kingdom David gave them, but better. The one who saves. That was a dangerous statement for Peter to say. Dangerous because it's political, because the Romans wouldn't take too kindly. There were many people, Jews, who tried to start revolutions already. And they had been caught and they had been crucified. And so maybe that's why Jesus says, don't talk about this. But then Jesus says, that he's going to have to suffer, that he will have to be handed over, and that he will be crucified. And Peter didn't like that because Peter was projecting his idea of who Jesus was onto Jesus as this glorious Messiah who would bring victory. But I don't think Jesus cared for anyone's idea about who he was supposed to be or who we wanted him to be or how we describe who Jesus is. I don't really know if that mattered to Jesus so much. It didn't seem to matter to him in the Synoptic Gospels. In fact, he would rebuke people and say, "Why do you call me teacher? You have one teacher." I think Jesus in the Synoptic Gospels is very elusive about who he is. Even when he's on trial with Pontius Pilate, he won't give a direct answer and come right out and say who he is. And leaves us all wondering, what is with you, Jesus? What are you about? Maybe because of all this bickering about the specifics theologically of who Jesus is the wrong focus. And I think this passage shows us that maybe it's the wrong focus because he doesn't turn it into what he is. He turns it back to us, to the disciples, and says, you have a choice. If you are going to follow, if you are going to walk the way, my way, then let them take up their cross. Jesus was more concerned about whether we were watching, whether we were seeing the example that he was giving us of what it means to be human, to be a disciple, to walk in a way that is risky, that is brave. And to do that, I think Jesus wanted his disciples to know who they were, to know themselves. We can struggle with that. It can be a hard path to know who we are. It requires sometimes having a community and friends who we can ask, who do you think I am? I think I know who I am, but do you think you know who I am? It's good to have friends who can reflect back to us. Maybe we're way off. Who will give us an honest answer with no condemnation? Many in their lives have to escape from projections other people put on them, a parent's expectation or a society's expectation of who they are, or for some, a taboo of maybe sexuality of who they are and not being able to be honest about that. Many have had to escape and walk a path away from something to know who they are, to be able to accept who they are, and to love who they are. And sometimes that means having to move through suffering, as Jesus would suffer, to face those things that pain us, to suffer the disappointment of others who want us to be something different, or even suffer the rebuke of those who don't like what we say we are. Taking a stand that may offend, or telling a truth about yourself that might result in you losing friends, community, status, or just to be judged. I think Jesus believed that because before you can deny yourselves, you then need to know who you are. Before you can deny yourself, like Jesus said, well, you have to know who you are. And in order to take up a cross, in order to walk a risky, dangerous path that might cause some loss in your life, you really have to be grounded and rooted and know who you are. It's not a path for somebody who's easily swayed in the choices they make. And we also need to know, as he says, take up their cross. Also need to know what our cross is. Many people say, oh, it's my cross to bear. And they talk about something that's suffering, that they're enduring. And it can mean suffering. It can mean the difficult things that we've experienced in our lives or had to face or had to crawl and struggle through the muck to get ourselves out of. It can mean all that stuff that kind of muddles and mucks up our view and vision of who we are or what is true and what is real. We all know somewhat of that struggle. Believe me, I have known that struggle myself. And that struggle and that suffering does indeed become a part of who you are. So a cross not only can be a struggle and a suffering, but then can be turned into a passion, just as Jesus in the passion of the Easter week. A passion that is something outside of yourself that you feel so strongly about that you're willing to give yourself away to it, to lose yourself into it. It may be because of what you suffered that you didn't get through it, and then you have a passion to help others who may suffer the same thing. It may be a passion that's just born within you for others, to help others. Something, though, that is motivated by love. A love for others and wanting to see that people, too, can know who they are. To help them, teach them, inspire them, heal them, free them. To help them begin walking that scary road towards being rooted in who God created them to be. To know who they are. Then they can be in that safe place to be enlightened and to know the way ahead of them. Jesus gives his disciples the gift of showing them who he was and then telling the honest truth about the suffering he will endure. Jesus gives the disciples the gifts of showing them who they really are so that they can be free to then give themselves away to others. So that they can stay with them because he was taking them on hard roads. This way is not easy. But when walked, we are able to gain so much more than the stuff around us, whether it's material stuff or other people's opinions about who we are. If we're able to free ourselves from being so focused on that, we can know who we are. And in knowing who we are, as Calvin says, we can know who God is, and we can know truth. Things, as Jesus said, around us that suck the life out of us, that we lose our life into, trying to obtain. And by walking a different way, we may gain our very life. Now, I wouldn't say that the call is just to know who we are and then bask in the greatness of who we think we are. It's not what Jesus is saying. Know an honest view of yourself so that you are more equipped and more able to give, to help others. To not be so preoccupied then with who you are because you walk that way. It allows you to then walk out, view others. Recently watched Walking the Camino, the documentary, 6 Ways to Santiago, because we have a couple of friends who are now on that journey. It's this old pilgrimage across northern Spain that's been there for centuries. It used to be walked as a way of penance, or people you can go to jail for what you did, or you can walk the Camino. Which one would you like to do? Or rich people would pay some people to walk it for them for penance. But now people walk it for all sorts of different reasons. Some of it's religious, some of it is personal and experiential, some of it just like doing new things. But the documentary follows 7 pilgrims as they walk. And they all give different reasons for walking it. But the theme of this is that journey is much more than just an external journey, but is an internal journey. It's an internal journey for people. And surely, as we watch these people being interviewed as they walk this path, many are working things out. Many are facing pain, not just the physical pain of blisters and tendinitis and all sorts of things that arise, but the emotional pain that they carry with them. And they work it out, they face who they are, and some find peace. In the kindness of one stranger, one woman finds maybe she hasn't been so kind in her life. And for her, it becomes a road of penance, of repentance. And people finding out who they are. And we all know that now in the news, we're seeing so many displaced immigrants looking for home. They have lost truly everything around them. Their home, everything they knew, their careers, their lives, some of them, many of them family members. And they're risking their lives to find a home so they can be who they are. So their children can grow up and know who they are. And they are asking, who are we? But not only who I am, but they are asking those people around them who have the means to help them, who are you? Who are you going to be in this moment? One who only looks to their own interests, or one who can see that we're all connected, that we all need to come together, knowing who we are, and then walking that difficult walk, the way of Jesus, the way of compassion, the way of love.